Destination Newry coming live to you from the heart of the old town of Newry and the burgeoning new city of Newry. I'm Rowan Hand. I have the joy of being your host through until 10:30 Irish time this morning. It's just an hour and a half away. Also great joy welcoming my special guests now, Jason Magee and Harry Lee. And the title I've whacked onto this is Animation Filmatics. But here you are, you're using animation, guys, very skillfully, I have to say, and you're doing it to garner tales of heritage. Is that fundamentally it?
That's exactly it, Rowan. What we're doing is we're working on producing an animation series based on recordings that Harry would have collected from people last year about the heritage of Ireland, about how people live their lives, and putting that together in a cartoon format. In a
cartoon format. Cartoons, animation on television is, I'm going to use the word notoriously, expensive.
It
takes time. It takes money.
It sure does. We managed to produce a 1-minute animatic little short clip at a very low cost, but ultimately what we want to do is raise funds through a website called gatheringheritage.com. Gatheringheritage.com.
Check it out and you'll find how good all of this is. But I think really what you're doing, Harry, you're doing right, because he told me that you're 75. Yeah. You should just make a movie about how to look as good as you do at 75, and then that you'll make a millions and a fortune, I think. But you're. Yeah. I'll whisper this. Don't listen. You're the brain, really. You're the animator. Yes.
Yeah. Last year, Ronan, we did in the museum. We set up a little studio in Dundalk Museum for the Gathering year.
Yes.
And we did people coming back to Dundalk for holidays during the Gathering year, just been away for years. And we also did some interviews with people, famous Dundalk people, to get a bit of publicity. People like Jim Corr, like Tom Savage of RTE. We did Tommy Smith from ESPN, all of those, and we got.
Tommy was great. I did a nationwide with Tommy.
He's brilliant.
He was a great fellow.
Absolutely,
he's a world-renowned sports commentator in America.
And people don't realise how big he is.
He's big-time stuff. Yeah. He's huge altogether.
Yeah, but it was something that I love doing. We did 30 odd of them, from ordinary people to famous people. Now, this particular little clip that we have done as a sample, shall we say, of the animation was one of the ones that this was a lady called Eileen White, and she went away to England over 40 years ago. And no, 40 years, 60 years ago, and she was only 14, excuse me, and she had great stories to tell about Dundalk. She's a wonderful lady who formed her own company in England. She now has 100 people working for her in Lowestoft in England. She's in Dundalk at the moment, actually, on holidays. But we thought this little clip here was perfect to show people what we were trying to do.
Unfortunately, we can't show it this morning. I've slipped up there. I apologise to you. But I will run it on Monday.
Yes.
And if this lady is in Dundalk, maybe she'd come down to me on Monday if she's still here.
Unfortunately,
she's gone.
We were hoping to be able to maybe take her down this morning, and she's going back tomorrow morning.
That's good. That's good.
Well, the thing is, Rowan, is that we have a longer interview, her entire hour-long interview that Harry recorded with her on a website called gatheringhhistory.com. So if people look at that, they can get the full story. But all the interviews we have are on that website, the full 30. So we are working on creating small little snippets, maybe 5 minute long in total, to capture.
Could you deal with that, Ryan, please?
The animation. Yeah.
Sorry, it's just someone has come along. Right. There's some problem there. They're dealing with it at the door. But we may have to. There seems to be. Can I check something outside now? Would you just talk away about it for what? It's an odd thing to say, but I think it's a health issue at the front door. So I'm going to go and see in case there's something needs to be done.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pitch the camera for
I'll take your ease there, and I'll come back presently because it just could be a kind of medical emergency. And I'll explain to the guys there what's going on as soon as I get back.
Well, on
talk away for 2 minutes.
On our behalf, what we'd like to do is. My name is Jason Magee, Harry Lee. We are working on building up an animation program based on interviews that Harry did last year. We'd like to.
You keep talking.
We'd like to crowdfund that animation, and we'd like people's help. So our animation is going to cost somewhere around 11,000 euros to produce. We want to crowdfund it via gatheringheritage.com, and we want people to buy into the dream. So if you think you want to see more Irish heritage in a cartoon form, then please contribute via credit card or PayPal on gatheringheritage.com, and we will expand out on the 30 interviews we have. We also have some stars, like Jim Corr's done an excellent interview for us, all about his music career and all about how he became famous. And we got a great interview with Tommy Smith from ESPN, and the world-renowned director John Moore did an excellent clip for us, who's recently finished Die Hard.
Why have you stopped? You don't need me. I should tell you what happened there. It sounded like a medical emergency, and that's why I went out. But in reality, it was an elderly zealot coming in to say, someone is parked in a disabled parking spot.
Okay.
Wow. You know, the world was suddenly coming to an end because someone, I don't know who did it. Whoever did it shouldn't have been doing it.
Do you know, this can only happen in a situation like this here. It could never happen, see Pat Kenny getting up.
No, just to make sure.
I love this. This is
Of
brilliant.
course, but you see that door, that glass door takes us out onto the front street.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And if the woman had needed anything from artificial external cardiac massage through a tracheotomy, that I could have done it, but I would have stopped at the tracheotomy.
We would have had an exclusive here.
You would have, surely to goodness. But there's a fellow with a baseball hat now driving away out of the disabled park. Don't be doing that in future. Don't be at it. I've told him now. This crowdfunding is the great thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not so prevalent maybe over this side of the world, but in the US it's huge, and it's where people come up with an idea and say, would you like to help us achieve our dream? And put your hand in your pocket and donate. So I've seen on websites where people have produced full movies, multi-million-dollar movies. It's very popular amongst musicians, book writers, people in that arts field who may find it difficult to get grants or funding, would just say to their peers, look, I've got this idea, you like this music, you like this book, you like this film, please help us create it. And people, there's lots and lots of crowdfunding websites out there. When you go to them, people are achieving their dreams through the community supporting it.
But what does the community get out of it?
What the community gets out of it is a warm sense of participation. But what they actually get from us, Rowan, is we have a sliding scale of different things that we'll send. So if you give us X amount, we'll send you a DVD or a T-shirt or a signed script. Or even at the top level, if someone really wants to dig deep into their pockets, we will write them into one of the cartoons as a character.
But I think above everything, what the folk are doing who subscribe to the scheme, I think most importantly, they're contributing in real terms to the gathering and to the holding of Dundalk heritage.
Yeah, that's something that's the love of my life, is talking about, reminiscing about Dundalk. And as a matter of fact, I was to do...
What was McClintock's first name? The explorer.
Oh, yeah, he was born down beside...
He was down in Seatown.
Yeah, in Seatown then.
He was the Arctic explorer. He was the guy who went off to find Franklin and brought home the evidence. A Dundalk man that Franklin was gone. He was dead.
But you see, what my thing is, though, Ronan, that is history.
Oh, yeah.
What you're talking about. What I'm talking about is when I was growing up in Dundalk. I was born in 1939. Second World War started 2 weeks after I was born. And when I say that to kids, there was in the museum a few months ago, there was an exhibition of Anne Frank. And I was showing kids around it. And I always ask them the one question: do you think that anyone is alive that was born before the Second World War? No, they're all dead. They're all dead. And you tell them, I was here. So that's the area that I'm very interested.
And you see,
talking.
I heard. I'm sure this is a true story because I trusted implicitly the man from Dundalk who told it to me.
Tell us who he is.
Well, he's dead and gone now, but he's a lovely man, and he was a sailor all his life, and a very close, dear personal friend, Pater Byrne of Byrne Coach Building. But Patter tells the story that around about the time of the emergency, as it was called in Ireland, the Irish, they had new uniforms in the Irish forces, and they were parading up the Avenue Road or whatever it was, and the cry went out from one house to the other, "Run, run, the Germans have landed." And that's what they thought I'd gonna, there's a wee bit of heritage for you this morning. Yeah. But I mean, interestingly there, how you define the difference between history and heritage.
Yeah, I've always said at school, we were not taught any history about Dundalk. We knew nothing about why Roden Place was called Roden Place. And I did an interview with Lord Roden a few months ago. He was down in the museum. And he told me all about Francis Street, called after his wife.
Wow.
And Jocelyn Street, called after an uncle. Clonbrassil Street, called after somebody else. And I was saying to him, you know, we were never told. No one in Dundalk knows why those streets are called that. And that was a wonderful, wonderful, and that's the kind of thing that I.
But was that was the reason for that lack of knowledge, that sort of imprisoning and incarceration of history thrown away? Is it an ascendancy thing? People were looking at and seeing it as a British aristocracy kind of thing, not to be associated with in any way?
I don't. It might have been through the teachers at the school.
Yeah.
Either that or they didn't know. Which was a big problem when I was at school. You know. But I just loved the reminiscing and talking to people about.
Jason, you've got a good man here, because not not only are you telling lies about your age, but you have an ease of conversational style, which will bring all of this out of people.
Yeah, well, that was one of the primary reasons that the interviews last year were such a success, Rowan, because Harry has a style to be able to put people at their ease when he's talking about them. Essentially what Harry was doing was interviewing people so that they would confide in him. Yeah. They were telling them their life stories. So some of it was happy, some of it was sad, some of it was melancholy. So Harry was able to just let the spark go and let somebody release all the stories about their life, private things that they hadn't really confided in. So you get a full sense of somebody's life in the recordings. And it is, as Harry was saying, it's a social heritage interview. It's not a history element. And a lot of the kids in schools that we've spoken to, that there is a gap there. They don't know about the social history of Ireland. They don't know how people in the 50s spent their pastimes. You know, they don't know what it was like to walk to school with no shoes on. They don't know why people emigrated really in the 80s, and then what their vision of coming back to Ireland is like now. So there is a gap there, and we're hoping to fill it.
My own family came from, my grandfather hand, Michael, came from Donegal to Carrickmacross, and then the family came from Carrickmacross to Dundalk. And we were, my grandfather Michael married a Corr of Dundalk, and they lived, I can't remember the road, but I was writing a column in the Dundalk Democrat for about 5 years. And I got a letter from a man who said, "I think this is your grandfather I'm talking about, Michael Hand. They lived in whatever the road was, I wish I could remember it, but he was a lovely, friendly little man." That's how he described my grandfather Hand. And I always remember behind the door in the hallway, there was the knitting machine that they got the first ever, Mrs. Hand had the first ever knitting machine in our area.
Probably Singer.
Singer, I would have thought. And that was exciting to hear at that time. But then you see came the railways to Dundalk. Now, are your stories taking you into the industry, the Henkel bubble car, the railways?
We've already done that, actually.
So that's done and dusted.
We did 6 year before last in the museum as well, with people that has retired from all of these firms that used to be in existence. We have them on the website as well.
Yeah, and you had, of course, the brewery.
The brewery, where Jason...
I worked in the brewery for 10 years.
Yeah. You'd have known Arthur then.
Yeah.
Arthur Bingham.
Yes, I knew Arthur.
Arthur sailed with me.
Right, and there were some great stories that came from the breweries, because the brewery was always thought of as a family.
Yep.
And when you worked there, it was different. You were making something that was alive, and there was a very strong sense of family. So there were some great stories, there were some great characters, there were some great comedic situations that were between management and staff, but everybody, there was immense pride about working in a brewery, which I don't think you really get in any other industry.
But you're part of Arthur's pension deal, as I recall him boasting, was 10 million gallons of Guinness or Harp every year. That was absolutely yes, I'll do that. That's fine. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, family. It's quaint and it's lovely. Where would you get it nowadays?
You wouldn't get
you
it
just wouldn't at all.
And I was one of the last people to leave McCardle's Brewery when it was closed, and I collected together the original opening accounts from 1863. They were in a safe and they were just left behind. So there was lots of bits and pieces. I collected those together and went to the museum and gave them in, and then I set up a website and kind of started on this journey that we're on now.
Harry, you have 30 interviews done.
Yes.
I know they're all interesting in their different ways, but is there one of the 30 that made you go, wow, this I love? And if there is, tell us it.
I would probably say, and it's no disrespect to every one of them, some of them were people that were never talked into a microphone before, and I appreciate them coming down. But the one that I got great satisfaction out of, and how nice a man he was under terrible pressure at the time and everything, was Tom Savage.
Tom, yes, my colleague,
the RTE chairman. He's retiring actually now this month.
May I give you a story about Tom Savage?
Lovely man. Yeah.
Once upon a time, when I started in broadcasting, it's a great story. Tom was the secretary to Cardinal Conway in Armagh.
Yeah.
And he was a priest.
He was a priest, yeah.
And there was a man did a UTV program called, the program was called What's It All About? And the man who presented it was Ernie Strathdee. Ernie took ill, and I was prevailed upon to come and sit in for him. We're talking 50 years ago at least. So I did this, and it was the time of the Biafran famine, 40-something years ago. And I was doing a piece in the program highly critical of the Catholic Church, who didn't at that time have Trócaire, and I was battling to have Trócaire. And Tom was sitting as my guest, representing the Cardinal, and I'm saying, now, Tom, Biafra and the Catholic Church did magnificent things in Biafra. Men took great chances with their lives and were courageous. It was great. But Tom was sitting there. I said, Tom, the very least we could expect, and mention this to Tom when you see him, he might remember it. The very least we could expect the Catholic Church to do next Sunday is to ring the bells all over Ireland, sound the bells of Ireland tolling for the dead in Biafra. And Tom, I think he might have regretted saying, he said, yes, Ron, I know it's a good idea, it sounded a good idea, but it really, in the organisation like the Catholic Church, the only time they would ring the bells is if a cardinal died or something like that. And I said, Tom, ecce homo, you out of your own mouth. But that was Tom, and I've loved him ever since. He's a good man.
Lovely man. Came down the whole way from Dublin especially
why
for
wouldn't
it.
he?
Talked about Pat Kenny leaving RTE. He talked about the priesthood and his brother, who was away to be a priest as well, who was involved in the media as well, of course, with the local radio. But he was a lovely, warm man, and just told his story.
That's Tom.
So nice, And but I enjoyed every one of them. The one that we got the biggest satisfaction was the little clip we got live not live. He recorded in Los Angeles. Was John Muir. Now, John, a very busy man, and we were looking for somebody that we knew we would get a bit of publicity out of. We got in contact with John through his mother, who lives in Dundalk, and he eventually got back to us. What do you want me to do? Be delighted to do it for you. And he did this little 4.5-minute clip, which is on YouTube, and it's just John Muir Dundalk, and you can listen to it. And he talks about growing up in Cox's Domain, going to school in the Redeemer. But he told this wonderful story.
Is there an E at the end of the Moor?
Yeah. He told this wonderful story, Ron, about a teacher in the Redeemer school called Tom Murphy.
Yeah.
And he said, in the little clip, we played it that night at the launch of the thing, and he said, I would like to thank very much indeed. I never would have got on only for the love of the camera that a teacher in the Redeemer, Tom Murphy, gave me the love. And he talked lovely. But when we were doing the launch, we didn't tell anybody we had this clip. But Jason got in contact with Tom Murphy.
He didn't know,
no,
and you had him in
he's
there.
He's retired now.
Fantastic.
We put him up to the front row, and he sat there, this elderly gentleman, something like yourself, Ronan.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're
75, I tell you.
And he sat there, and I was
Full
watching
marks.
him. I was watching him, and the next thing the thing came up, and I'd like to thank Tom Murphy, and the tears started coming down his eyes. And I went over to him, and I got him to stand up and talk to me, and he said, "I am so touched. In all the years that I was a teacher, never, ever, ever in all those years did anyone ever say to me that I'm pleased with the help that you gave me." And it was a lovely moment.
It was a lovely moment, but a terrible indictment of Dundalk former students. Yet not one of them said thanks.
None of them, no.
Oh, almighty. Yeah,
And there was one other, the interview that Jim Core did with us was a very insightful interview because he I don't think has ever given the interview that he gave to us where he told about stacking shelves in Tesco's, sweeping up the floor in nightclubs, to earn a crust, to get his first keyboard, all the way through to playing in pubs around Dundalk, and then getting their ultimate lucky break. But that was the 50th lucky opportunity that they'd had, and that one clicked through hard work. It's a great insight into it. Just didn't happen for them like that.
No.
And we got a mention on Ian Dempsey's programme the next morning when we put it up on the website.
It was great. Well, listen, you're very, very good. Now, before we finish, I want to emphasize the crowdfunding thing.
Yes.
Because that's why we're here. We want some money from across the world to invest in the heritage of Dundalk. And the money will be used to create a series of documentaries, animated documentaries.
12-part.
About 12-part documentary in animation that will be screened on television, we hope. So tell them again about the crowdfunding.
We want you to support our heritage project by going to gatheringheritage.com. You'll see a little 1-minute clip about Eileen White. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can contribute to our fund, and in return, we'll send you memory keys, DVDs, T-shirts, or if you want to give us a lot of money, we'll actually write you into one of the episodes.
That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed for
Thank
coming
you,
in. I thank you most sincerely, Jason Magee and Harry Lee. It's got a ring to it. Jason Magee and Harry
You could write a song.
Lee. Come do a thing with me. There you go. God bless you. Get the money. Make the movie.
Lovely,
Hey,
lovely
good
to
see
meet
you.
you.
God
Ronan.
bless you.
Lovely to meet you.
Take care.
Thank you.